Awesome. Welcome to another episode of the Integration Chronicles. Tap Integration is on a mission to define integration and then convert that definition into actionable, usable tools. And it's also to empower and amplify facilitators and their gifts. So I'm bringing on another incredible facilitator. His name is Dalton Follows. He is up to some really incredible work. He emphasizes integration really strongly in his work, and that's why I'm really excited to bring him on to talk to him today so that he can share his wisdom and his tools for integration for us. So thank you and welcome, Dalton.
Thank you so much. It's such a joy to be here.
So, Dalton, let's just jump right into it. Looking back, what were some pivotal moments that led you to facilitation work? And what was life like before you took that leap?
Ooh. Yeah. So what led me towards facilitation work was honestly a pathway through understanding the value of community. So I grew up in an environment that was very focused around achievement and less focused around that kind of nurturing warmth that comes from somebody really just being there for you unequivocally. So I learned as I grew up, I was really conditioned as I grew up to believe that my worth and my enoughness was directly in correlation to what I was achieving
Mm.
and who I was achieving it for and what caliber and all those lenses that led me to feel really alone and nervous and anxious and disoriented in my own life and in my own belief systems. And the start of the healing path that would later lead to Eastern religion and psychedelics and all the different wonderful modalities that have helped me started with having peers who were there for me in an emotional and spiritual context without expecting some performance or measurement. And that's what I would say is like kind of like the first introduction to the value of having somebody in service to you without an agenda. Yeah.
Beautiful. And how have you integrated that, for instance, into your work or your process?
Mm. Yeah, because it's complex because we navigate this Western system where things like facilitation and integration support do need to be in exchange for money in order for that facilitator or integration specialist to be able to make a livelihood and take care of themselves so that they can be in that state of service. So for me, I've been really cautious to try to navigate those boundaries and recognize that even though I do have my own personal kind of financial goals as I'm navigating this space, that when somebody does the courageous thing of saying, I need help, I'm ready to receive support, to never forget that first and foremost, it is a sacred honor to be there with that person in that state and I find that actually pretty easy because when you drop into that moment, for me at least, it is so exquisite and beautiful. And it might be really challenging, but getting to be there and witness somebody's soul, oh, like that is enough in itself. And yes, of course, you need to pay the bills and find your way to make it work outside of that, but never confusing that the first step is friendship. And that if somebody has the courage to ask, to be there and listen with your full heart.
Wow, absolutely. That the fact that they trust you to be the one that kind of like sits there while they activate.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a big honor. Can you share a transformative story from your journey, one that changed everything for you?
Mm. I was thinking of a different one as I came in, but something else came up in my mind. That was actually during a holotropic breathwork journey. It was a full 4 hour session. For those of you who know, it's very intense, very beautiful, but really, really intense. And this was earlier in my own psychedelic path, and a facilitator came over and I had consented to physical touch, and this man put a hand on my heart. I was in that moment, I was kind of starting to panic. I was in a state that is familiar in both like intense breath work and psychedelics, where I was like, my time must be up. I got to get up and go do something else. Like all the alarm bells inside of me were going off for me to just like get up and go somewhere else, to run from that state that was actually exactly where I needed to be. And he came over and he just gently put his hand on my heart. And for the next 20 or so minutes, every second, my kind of wounded child said that he was going to leave because he had somebody else to take care of. But he didn't. Each second, I was reaffirmed in my own worth and enoughness by the humble gesture of just a hand on my heart and him giving me that attention in that moment. And sure enough, it led to some of the most like profound openings after that point. But I remember that. And, one other that I'll note was during some of my training with a facilitator I really admired. I was brought in to help a really intense trauma case where somebody had lost a wife and child. So it was just sitting with grief and pain that was unimaginable. So my teacher brings me over as he's weeping and releasing some of this trauma in a ceremony and said to put a hand on him to support him. And my instinct was to rub his back. So my hand is placed and I start rubbing. And this facilitator turns to me and says, no, no, no. Don't try to make him feel better. Just be there for his grief. And that was another moment that kind of everything changed in my conception of the work because subconsciously I was going like, hey there, cut it out. Like your pain is making me uncomfortable. So I'm going to rub your back and try to invite you to end something that just simply by knowing what he's been through, it's not going anywhere. Like that grief and trauma had a lot of expression and still does to this day. And the second I stopped moving my hand in circles, I felt just the littlest glimpse of his grief. And it was excruciating. But again, back to that first note that we started with, the honor of feeling it, of his body trusting my body, that I wasn't there to try to fix or solve. I was just there to co-regulate, to allow his nervous system to have somebody else to lean on. That has stuck with me to this day as well.
Wow. Yeah. So beautiful. Something that comes up for me along those lines is to not save them from their process,
Mm.
or try to save them from the suffering of the experience, the discomfort of the experience, like cutting the cocoon too soon. But just being there with them is a really key piece for facilitation that I had my own initiation with. So that also really resonates for me. Um, in what ways has your approach to guiding others shifted since you began integrating your own experience? Along those lines, I'm curious, like, what is one, so it sounds like something integrated for you in that experience of him just like holding you, that there was like a deep healing that activated there. When it comes to integration, what is something that maybe has followed you for a while that has taken time to integrate a part of you? Maybe that's been resistant. If there's anything around that that you'd like to share.
Absolutely. And there's so much here. Early on, when I started this path, I was like, oh, integration, a 4-week process where you resolve everything that comes up. No, 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 no. It is so much longer than that. And kind of like the two layers that I'll answer your question was first, along the path, I came to recognize that for like the first period of my psychedelic work, I was integrating that which was comfortable. And I really mean physically comfortable, like body comfort. Like so much of my integration work was around health and taking care of my body, which I don't want to undermine the importance of those things. But if I look back at each of the journeys I was integrating, that was like a small portion of the insights I was receiving. And it was the quote unquote easiest to approach. But the things that were really carrying with me that weren't resolving or softening or changing were the hard things. And honestly, like the biggest tool that I've used that shift my integration from being to the compass of comfort to the compass of transformation is one, being very diligent. I'm a goal-oriented person, so I will record kind of my practices, especially during an integration period, and do my best to keep goals and be very intentional with what practices I'm doing in that sacred time after a journey, especially the first weeks when you have all that neuroplasticity to work with. But before I make that list of priorities for the week, I ask a question that Tara Brach asks all the time. What is love asking of me right now? And if I ask myself that question before I set my goals will change. Because if I just do it mindlessly, it's going to be the things that are taking care of my physical body, but not the more intense spiritual and trauma bodies. And the thing I'll share in terms of like a long-term integration process. So there's aspects of my childhood that were quite challenging. As with most, like we all have, we're all wounded during childhood to some regard. And some of that trauma was carrying with me and even was the thing that drove me to psychedelics once I discovered the level of physical trauma responses I was having on a daily basis due to things that had happened as a kid. There was this feeling of I want to like reclaim that energy and not be at the whim of this trauma. So I set out, and it was 2 years where that was like every journey, every focus. But it was really difficult because it didn't go anywhere. It didn't shift for a long time. I'd come home from the journey thinking that I was like, I had overcome it. And then I'd go see my family. And sure enough, I'd have like a somatic hangover of like 2 weeks after seeing them because of how much I was tensing up and dissociating in those old environments. And that was very humbling when it came to integration because at some point last fall, without any focus on that specific challenge, it softened. Like a thief in the night, just suddenly that trauma response became bearable. Of course, it was still there, but it no longer moved me into dysregulation. And all of a sudden, I've had like the best relationship I've ever had with my parents because I can see them in a more mindful way than just the reactions that I was navigating the previous years.
Mm,
And that experience gave me a lot of faith, gave me a lot of faith in the
mm,
practices and that like committing to things like breath work, yoga, meditation on a daily and weekly basis just for their own sake leads to results that you could never imagine. It doesn't always need to be like, I'm going to use this tool to fix this problem, but there can be a trust in the ancient wisdom that like the consistent and mindful use of the tools will help your body process what it needs to process that isn't as cognitive.
yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting how integration is so much like the actual psychedelic journey in itself, where you get the most out of it the more you let go and surrender. Because being in that like real desperation to heal or overcome can create resistance in itself that stops you from being able to actually let go of it or to integrate it. Like not watching a pot boil water, it's like just let go of it and it'll happen eventually. And just trusting it really requires a sense of trust and faith, and just knowing that when you're ready to release it, you will. And that could come in a year from now and 2 years from now, which is, yeah.
And
So,
I did want to make one small note because I did bring up goal setting, and I want to be a little cautious around that because we're in a Western culture that's so goal oriented. So the thing I just have to say as like another moment that changed everything for integration for me is recognizing like setting goals for habits as an experiment, not a mission to fail or succeed. Because if you say you're going to meditate, it's like so often I've had clients be like, I'm going to meditate 7 times this week. And then they meditate 3 times and they just focus on what went wrong and say, like, I'm such a loser. I didn't do it right. Like, and often that can lead to spirals into heavier energies. Whereas often what really happened that week is highly valuable and worth exploring because that was their intention, but then something happened that got like that made it not achievable. And focusing instead on what you can learn about yourself from not reaching that goal rather than doing the Western thing of castrating ourselves every time we don't achieve some
yeah.
bar that we set. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yes, that is so, so important. Yes. As someone who's also goal oriented, it can be a way for that part of us to bring us back to a place of inadequacy if we don't complete it.
Absolutely.
Um, what would you say is your favorite integration tool if you have one, or what is just one that you'd like to give to the readers listening or watching this?
There's two I would love to share. One is I am in love with Other Ship's Breathwork app. That has been a tool I have been subscribed to for a few years now, and I find breath work to be such, especially like the longer 30 to 60-minute breath work sessions, can bring you right back into those psychedelic states that, for me, reconnect me with my definition of God, the divine, beloved, and that kind of touch point can help me maintain the perspectives that I received in the expanded state. So that's one I just highly recommend. And I think they've done a beautiful job. It's secular. The music's really fun. The facilitation's fantastic. Um, and of course, any other breath work, that's just the specific one I use. And then I would also recommend a practice that I do offer retreats for. So I must note that there is some bias in it, but the practice of neurosomatic mindfulness. It is a meditation method, again, that's secular, that's intended to reconnect the mind and body in a really beautiful and intentional way. And you can explore what bones feel like, what muscles feel like, and gain a recalibration to the messages your body's sending. And ever since I've done that practice, and I would say any other kind of somatic oriented meditation, I would highly recommend because the body has just so much to tell you about how your integration process is developing.
Yeah,
Mm.
yes, that's beautiful. Um, so some really great body integration tools with the breath work, and then a combination of a mind body with the neurosomatic,
Yeah,
really linking the mind to the body, which oftentimes by bringing the mind and body into union and harmony with each other can open the heart. So you get more access to that, to releasing of the emotions that are stored there.
that is such a
So,
great point. And I just as a note, because gosh, I could talk about all this stuff, but the resting the sense, like the mind in the heart region is so physical to like what you're saying. So the ability to know when your mind, like when your point of awareness is in the heart, and this might sound woo-woo, but there is like many millions of neurons in the heart and the stomach, and there is an experience in many expanded states where you can actually feel that central point move from up here to the heart, and being able to control that to an extent is just wonderful.
I totally agree. Yes. Can you tell our listeners um, about your offerings and about how the TAP members can work with you?
Absolutely. So the way that my kind of spiritual path is expressing right now has been the facilitation of ketamine assisted meditation retreats. And these retreats are really for those who are looking to take their own personal meditation and spiritual practice into a very deep way, but that's highly integratable. Like a basis of these programs is developing the capacity for humble practices and humble insights, the type that can really be applied to your everyday. And one of the ways that we try to really nurture integration is this isn't a psychedelic experience, but instead a transformation program. So everybody signing up is committing to 6 weeks of community work. And I mean that in that you are connecting with your peers and developing meaningful relationships through different kind of subgroups and larger group settings before we go and do this work together. And we are blessed to have this led by Roshi Fleet Mall, who is one of the greatest living meditation teachers. So we really aim to elevate that elder wisdom along with Sunny Strasberg, who's one of the highest regarded ketamine assisted psychotherapists and a wonderful human. And together they'll be running the program. Um, yeah, so I would love that if anybody feels a calling to what I just shared, please reach out and have a conversation. We have a lot of flexibility. Our goal is to really bring in those who are most aligned with the work. And the offer I can really extend to this community is that I'll reduce ticket prices by 30% for anybody from this community attending. That will apply to our tickets, not the accommodations, just as an important note.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's so generous. And that sounds amazing. Combining medicine with meditation in that way is just epic. I
Mm.
feel like that would prepare you for Vipassana
Yeah,
or
seriously.
maybe heal you from the trauma of a Vipassana. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it actually has an important note there. Uh, you will not be sitting for 9 hours a day. Just bringing up the Vipassana question. At our retreats, it is a blend of dyadic meditation, group meditation, and then group process work. So just to ease anybody's mind, this will not be a traditional style meditation retreat because those also scare me for the reference.
Yeah, they are. Oh, that sounds incredible. Awesome, Dalton. Thank you so much for spending the time today to share your wisdom and your integration tools and for the work that you do. I know it's impacting a lot of lives and giving people the hope that they need to just keep on going when they're in a rough place.
Well, it means the world to me. And I just want to thank you for having me and thank you for the work you're doing. I really can't overemphasize that. Like, this work is so complex, and you are just the best person I could have imagined to steward it. And the love and effort you've put in has already made so many people safer and so much more wisdom integrated. So, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And for the listeners and the readers, we'll be attaching the website for Dalton's retreats and all the information that he has for that. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.